Welcome back to Fighting Assumptions, the podcast and newsletter where we take the everyday idioms, common sense facts, and unquestioned beliefs of our world and put them under the microscope. If you've ever fumbled around a dark room looking for a light switch, chances are someone has jokingly called you blind as a bat. It is one of the most pervasive animal myths in human history. We picture bats as creatures of the pitch black night, relying entirely on biological sonar to frantically navigate the skies, while their useless, unseeing eyes go along for the ride. But there's a massive problem with this assumption. Every single bat species in the world has eyes, and none of them are blind. In fact, not only can bats see, but many species have vision that puts human night vision to shame. So how did we get it so wrong? Let's dive into the fascinating history of this assumption, the mechanics of bat vision, and why relying purely on sound just isn't enough. To understand why we assume bats are blind, we have to go back to the 1790s. Italian biologist Lazzaro Spallanzani was fascinated by how bats could navigate in total darkness without crashing into things. To test this, he conducted a rather gruesome experiment. He blinded several bats and released them into a room strung with fine silk threads. To his amazement, the blinded bats navigated the obstacles perfectly. When he plugged their ears, however, they crashed immediately. Spallanzani correctly concluded that bats were seeing with their ears, though he didn't know how. Fast forward to the 1930s, when American zoologist Donald Griffin used newly invented ultrasonic microphones to discover that bats emit high-frequency sounds to navigate, a process Griffin famously named echolocation. The scientific community was rightfully blown away by this discovery, but in the excitement of celebrating echolocation, a false narrative took root in the public consciousness. People assumed that because bats could navigate without sight, their eyes must be vestigial and useless. The erratic, zigzagging flight patterns of insect-hunting bats only added to the illusion that they were wildly flying blind. We mistook a superpower for a handicap. To truly break down this assumption, we have to look at the bat family tree. There are over 1,400 species of bats, and they generally fall into two broad categories, megabats and microbats. If you look at a megabat, like a flying fox, the blind assumption instantly falls apart. These bats have large, prominent puppy dog eyes. Megabats primarily live in tropical regions and feast on fruit and nectar. With the exception of one specific genus, megabats do not echolocate at all. Instead, they rely entirely on their keen sense of smell and highly developed vision to find food. Because they forage at dusk and during the night, their eyes are packed with specially adapted photoreceptors that allow them to absorb maximum light. Their night vision is exceptionally sharp, and recent studies show that some megabats even possess dichromatic color vision, allowing them to spot ripe fruits against green foliage in the twilight. Then we have the microbats, the echolocating hunters. These are the bats that gave rise to the myth. Microbats are generally smaller, eat insects, and use echolocation to hunt. Because of echolocation, microbat eyes are smaller than those of megabats, but they are far from useless. While echolocation is an incredible tool for tracking a fast-moving moth in pitch darkness, it has strict limitations. Sound dissipates quickly. The effective range of a bat's echolocation is surprisingly short, usually only 30 to 60 feet, that is 10 to 20 meters. If a microbat relied only on echolocation, it would be trapped in a tiny bubble of awareness. They need their vision for the big picture. Microbats use their eyes to navigate over long distances, using visual landmarks, like rivers, tree lines, and mountains. They use their eyes to detect predators, because a silent owl swooping in won't always trigger a bat's sonar in time, but the bat's eyes can pick up the movement. They also use their eyes to save energy. Echolocation is incredibly energy intensive, requiring constant, loud vocalizations. When commuting in open air, bats will often reduce their echolocation and rely on their sight. If you look at the anatomy of a bat's eye, it becomes clear that millions of years of evolution have fine-tuned it for a very specific lifestyle. Human eyes are dense with cones for bright light and color and have a moderate amount of rods for low light. Bat eyes are overwhelmingly dominant in rods. This gives them a massive advantage in dimly lit conditions. But the evolutionary marvels don't stop there. In recent years, biologists have discovered that several species of bats have photoreceptors capable of seeing ultraviolet light. Many night-blooming flowers reflect UV light to attract nocturnal pollinators. While human eyes are entirely blind to these UV signals, to a bat, these flowers glow like neon signs in the dark. The blind as a bat assumption perfectly illustrates how a simplified version of science can mislead us. When we discovered echolocation, we were so fascinated by the novelty of hearing the world that we stripped bats of their other incredible senses. Bats are not the bumbling, blind creatures of the night we often make them out to be. They are multi-sensory masters of the sky, seamlessly integrating high-definition night vision, ultraviolet sight, and biological sonar to conquer the darkness. Next time someone tells you they are blind as a bat, you can confidently tell them they actually have phenomenal night vision. Keep fighting assumptions.